Namaskar. We welcome you this morning to Sahitya, an understanding of the transdisciplinary nature of Indian literature. This is a part of Namaste 2020, an initiative of the Center for Soft Power in partnership, or should I say support with, from the ICCR and S. Vyasa University. Today is a wonderful day because it is dedicated to Lord Ganesha. And you will see in many parts of the world, this wonderful God, the son of Shiva and Parvati, Ganesha, Vinayaka, and he is called by so many names being worshipped. And as a practice, we always worship him before the starting of any new enterprise, because he is the one who vanquishes all obstacles for us. And it's my pleasure today to welcome Lucy Guest, or should I say Divya Prabha. She is an Indologist from the UK. She says that in some mysterious ways, unconsciously, her passion for Sanskrit came with her from her previous life. And Lucy Guest, now I would like to call her Divya Prabha, which is also what she's called. She runs the International Chandramauli Charitable Trust in Varanasi. Divya did her undergraduation and master's with honors at Oxford University. Well, you must wonder, she studied metallurgy and the science of materials. And after that, some years of working in the city of London and on Wall Street in American investment banks, she changed the course of her life by leaving the UK with Brahmarishi Vishwatma Bhavaraji Maharaj. She continued to learn under Swami Yogananda Parivrajika and came to Varanasi in 2006 to embark on traditional Sanskrit studies at Sampurnanand Sanskrit Vishwavidyalaya in Varanasi. She is inspired by the ancient Indian traditions of Sanatana Dharma, which includes the Vedas, yoga philosophy, and Bharatiya Sanskriti. She found that these support and show a way of leading a peaceful, conscious, truthful, acknowledgeable, happy, and sustainable life. Before we have Sri Dushyanth Sridhar's Upanyasakar, we will have Srimati Divya Prabha say a few words, and after his Upanyasam, once again we will have her give her observations. So over to you, Divya Prabhaji. Namaskar.
Pranam. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you on this incredibly beautiful and divine platform with the Center of Soft Power in conjunction with ICCR and S. Vyasa. Before we go into Sanskrit, I think that one of the really important things to understand in the Sahitya is also the language underpinning it. Because when we talk about Sanskrit, we're not just talking about some language. For instance, if we talk about, for instance, some Western language, Sanskrit is far beyond the language because it is a very specific energy. It has come not just through man, but actually a divine energy, where every single word has an eternal meaning and an eternal Shakti. And so it means that there's a very precise vibration for every word that we use in any Sahitya, in any text, in any aspect of Sanskrit, in the Wangmaya. So every vibration being very precise means that it conjures up, when you utter the sound or read the sound, it conjures up a specific vibration that has an effect on you in itself, because all of the vibrations that are surrounding us have an effect on us. So when we talk about the Sahitya, field of Sahitya, which stretches all the way from the Vedic Sahitya of the Samhita, the Brahmanas, the Aryanyaks, the Upanishads, and then moving through the Puranas, and then where we have the Adikavi, Valmiki Ramayana, Mahabharata, etc., and then moving on into the more modern field of Kalidas, we can see that that divinity of the Sanskrit language is underpinning all of these different works, because even when we look at Kalidas, we see every piece of work starts with a Mangalacharan relying on the divine energies, whether it be Nandi and Shiva, because the whole field is underpinned by the concept of Dharma, Art, Kama, Mokshanam, Purushartha, Chatushtayam. And these things are inseparable. We can't talk about Sahitya without understanding that this very divine energy and concept and aim of life is part and parcel of any composition. And of course, when you talk about Natak, you've got the three different kinds, whether it's going to be historical or purely the imagination of the Kavi, or a combination of the two. And when we go right back to the beginning, where we start with the Vedic Samhita, of course, the Vedas are aparoshayam. So there's a very specific and infinite divine energy that is all pervasive across this entire field. And when we go to the Kavitas like Valmiki's Ramayana, Kalidas's Meghdut, began Shakuntala, you are getting a very easy access point to this very special energy, which is all encompassing and life-changing. And this is the very reason that I'm in this field, is because of the fact that it's had on my own life. And so just reading the Acharans of any of these different books are enough to give you that life-changing experience, which is all about taking you back to the source of yourself, to getting you to know who you are. And so this is such an important part of the Bharatiya Sanskriti. And even when we look at the word of Bharat, Vayam Rachiti Bharatam, that which is joined by light, Prakashena Yuktaha. And when we say light, we mean knowledge. And this is the key point, I think, when you talk about any of the different fields of the Bharatiya Sanskriti, you'll always come back to this. And this is why it is a soft power, not for a geopolitical purpose, but because this is something that benefits mankind, no matter where they're sitting in the world, no matter what tradition they come from. There's an energy transmuted through these texts, through the listening of the poetry or the play, whether it's Drishya or Shravya, whether it's a Kandakavya, Mahakavya, etc. There is an energy coming through the words of all of these poets or rishis and sages that has something that uncovers our experience in life, connecting us to something that is permanent. And when we connect something that is permanent, we have the potentiality to experience permanent happiness and bliss and knowledge and light, as opposed to the temporary. And when we look at fields that would be outside this concept of Bharatiya Sanskriti and the Sahitya and all its connected disciplines, we're looking at things that are temporary, that they're fleeting. They may be fitting a particular period of time, but look at the timelessness of all of the literature that has come from us. We talk about Kalidas as if he has just been with us perhaps 100 years ago, but we're talking about centuries and centuries and centuries ago that all of this literature has been passed on to us, and not just passed on to us, but protected through extraordinary periods of time, and it maintains that freshness and newness as if it was composed today. And I think that this is something that's really magical and really has to be really experienced by every single person. And the poetry is written in such a simple language. Unless you go to like Banbat and Kadambari and all these kind of texts, the language is very beautifully explained, very easy to connect with. And I think that's also perhaps the beauty of the rules of poetics that we've also been given. If you look at Kavya Prakash and Sahitya Darpan and Waman's Kavya Lanka Sutrani, there's such a complex underlying to all of the literature that we do have, you know, but it tells us things like to beautify your piece of work, keep the language very simple, use the main meaning of any word, which is something that definitely stands it apart from when we look at other parts of the world. This is something really unique to the traditions that we have. And all of these people were sages, rishis, munis, sadhaks in themselves. If you look at Kalidas himself, the ability to compose came through a divine boon of Mother Goddess, hence the Kalidas. So every single aspect that's within the subject, but also outside the subject that comes together, leads to a very divine experience for the person who's reading, watching, or listening to these things. So we're very, very lucky to have such a rich and divine knowledge that has been passed to us. And it gives us also such an incredible sense of what the culture is. Even if we look, for instance, at Harsha Charatam, you know, from King Harsha's time, who explains that in those days, if a 5-year-old child was found not to have gone to the Gurukul, the family would be punished. If they found someone having not bathed in the morning before sunrise by Brahmin, they would be punished. So we've got such a rich culture and a divine experience passed through all of these texts. It really is something to be experienced. And even if you just read one line, a Mangalacharan from any of these works, it's something that will certainly change your life. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here today, and I hope that this inspires people to pick up those books either online as a PDF and delve into them for themselves in the original language, because even if you don't understand the words, the energy is going to give you something. And that's how I started, without any understanding, but simply listening and repeating the sounds. So Hari Om, Tat Sat, and Pranam.
Namaskar. Thank you so much for those beautiful comments. We will now move to the Upanyasam of Sri Dushyanth Sridhar, who is an Upanyasakar. He is one of the most sought after public speakers in Sanatana Dharma, who renders discourses in English and Tamil. He has acted in the movie Vedanta Deshika as the protagonist, besides penning its story and dialogues. He organizes heritage tours and conceptualizes dance productions. He manages Desika Daya, a charitable trust that has donated money to and sponsored cultural activities. He has also started an online Gurukul for Vedantic studies. So, Kotiji, I request you to start. Right now, we will have his video playing. but he will probably join us at the end of this because we are trying to avoid these internet issues of coming in the way of long talks. So over to you, Kotiji. Can you please play the video?
Kujantam Ramarameti Madhuram Madhuraksharam Aruhya Kavita Shakham Mande Valmiki Kokilam Valmike Munisimhasya Kavita Vanacharinaha Shrinvan Ramakathanadam Konayadi Paramgatim Vedavedye Parepumsi Jate Dasharathatmaje Vedav Prachetasadaasit Sakshad Ramayanatmana Anjana Nandanam Veeram Janaki Shokanashanam Kapisham Akshahantaram Vande Lanka Bhayankaram Manojavam Marutatulyavegam Jitendriyam Buddhimatam Varishtam Vatatmajam Vanarayuthamukyam Sriramadutam Shirasa Namami Anjaneya Madipathalananam Kanchanadri Kamaniya Vigraham Parijata Tarumulavasinam Bhavayavi Pavamana Nandanam Yatra Yatra Raghunatha Kirtanam Tatra Tatra Kritamasta Kanjalim Bashpavari Paripurnalochanam Marutim Namata Rakshasantakam. Namaskaram to all of you who are listening and participating in this Shravana Mahayajnam that consists of speeches, discussions, debates and presentations on a variety of topics that relate to our priceless, very revered, ancient Vedic or Indic civilization. My obeisances to the organizers who have laid before us a beautiful platter of a variety of topics, each of which is a treasure in itself. Today I am fortunate to be addressing you all in such early hours on the multidisciplinary approach that we have taken in our Vedic civilization towards our literature. When we speak of literature, all of you will be aware that the Adharam for Vedic civilization is the Vedas in itself. There is no doubt about it. We have had various philosophers who were born in this holy land and have blessed us with beautiful and exquisite commentaries. The Advaita Siddhantam, as propagated by Adi Shankara and later developed into a full-fledged system by various acharyas. Vidyaranya, besides Vidyaranya, we have Madhusudana Saraswati, Sadashiva Brahmendra, the acharyas of Sringeri, Puri, Dwaraka, Joshimath, Kanchi, Kamakoti Peetham. Many such acharyas have made that into a full-fledged system. Likewise, the Visishtadvaita school of philosophy, as propagated and as nurtured by Yamunacharya and Ramanujacharya, and later very, very strengthened by Swami Vedanta Deshika and all the acharyas of Parakala Math, Ahobila Math, Andavan Ashramam and so on, have helped create the school of Visishtadvaita. Likewise, in the Dvaita school of philosophy, we have the very, very well-known Ananda Tirtha, also known as Purna Prajna or Madhvacharya. Later, the school was nurtured by Jayatirtha and Vyasa Tirtha, Raghavendra Tirtha, and so on. Besides these three schools of philosophy, we also have Achintya Bheda Bheda, Shuddha Advaita, and so on. But one thing which is common to all of these schools of philosophy is they all base their interpretations, their explanations, their gloss on the Vedas. So there is no doubt amongst these acharyas that Vedas, the cluster of Vedas, forms the very foundation. Though the roots of a tree may not be visible to our eyes, though we may have to dig it up, take those efforts to see the roots is what that holds a tree straight and tight for centuries. So the roots of Sanatana Dharma, the Vedic civilization, lie very well at the Vedas. When we speak of Vedas, we have the four: Rig, Yajuhu, Sama, Atharvanam. Samaharas Samnam, Pratipadamricham, Dhama Yajusham, Layaf Pratyuhanam, Lahari Vitatir Bodhajaladehe, Katha Darpakshubhyat Kathakakula Kola Halabhavam, Haratu Antardhvantam, Hayavadana Hesha, Halahalaha, states Vedanta Deshika. So all these four Vedas form the cluster, the foundation, the root. Well, each of these Vedas have the first three parts which are generally clubbed into the Purva Mimamsa Bhagam that talks about Karma Kandam, Brahmanam, Aranyakam and Samhita, and the last part, the Uttara Bhagam, which is the Upanishads, constitute the Vedanta Bhagam. So the Veda Bhagam, the first three, and the Vedanta Bhagam together constitute the root. However revered they are and how much ever we value them, they are cryptic in nature. You need the help of acharyas like Sayanacharya, Uvatacharya, Mahidhara, Bhattavaskara, Rangaramanuja who have commented upon the entire Vedas or sections of Vedas to understand what each of the mantra is. What is the link to each of the mantras? It seems the Vedas were themselves a bit worried about this as to how people will be interpreting those aphorisms. So it is said that the Vedas sought refuge at the feet of Paramatma, and the Lord said, do not worry about people misinterpreting or misrepresenting your content. The quintessence of whatever you speak, the Vedas and the Vedanta speak, will be born as Upabrahmanams. That which will, upon reading, will take us very close to Brahman is Upabrahmanam. They are majorly Itihasas and Puranas. In the Itihasas, which are generally given more brownie points than the Puranas for their direct accounts, in the Itihasas we have just two in number. One is Valmiki's Srimad Ramayanam, the Adi Kavyam. Second is Krishna Dvaipayana or Badarayana or Vedavyasa's Mahabharatam. One is close to 24,000 verses with the 7 cantos: Bala, Ayodhya, Aranya, Kishkinda, Sundara, Yuddha and Uttarakandam. Mahabharatam, along with the Khilabhagam of Harivamsha, is called Sapadalaksha Grantham, close to 1,25,000 verses. Amongst these two, so amongst the Puranas and Itihasas have brownie points. In the Itihasas, between Ramayana and Mahabharata, many acharyas have concluded and substantiated such a claim that Ramayana is more authentic. When I say authentic, there is nothing dubious about Mahabharata. More authentic is the crux of Ramayana is very clear. So Ramayana scores more brownie points than Mahabharata. Itihasa Puranabhyam Vedam Samubhabrahmayet Bibheti Alpashrutat Vedat Mamayam Pracharishyati is the shloka. So our topic for the day is, in this huge cluster of Vedic civilization, when we are blessed with so many books, when we consider Ramayana, the multi-disciplines that are involved in it do not come with a very regulated approach. When I say this, I'll explain. Valmiki, when he compiled and presented Ramayana as the biography of a living person, because he was very much living during the times of Rama. The first shloka is Konasvin Sampratam Loke Gunavan, who in the present world. So when he gave this work, his intent was not to, okay, in chapter 33, I'm going to introduce astrology. In chapter number 44, I'm going to introduce metallurgy. He never had this plan. It has been the approach of Vedic civilization that you see divinity in science. You see divinity in every aspect around you. Divinity and science are no different. Divinity and nature is no different. Has been our approach. Even before I begin discussing this, I will take you to one verse from the Nalayira Divya Prabandham. Amongst the Indian languages, like how Sanskrit holds the tag of being very old, one language which gives it a very tough competition for having had the evidence of being that old and being spoken across a larger section of people. One of the oldest spoken languages is Tamil. In Nalayara Divya Prabandham, the Alvar, who is Tondaradi Pudi Alvar, states, Pachaimamalai pol meni pavalavai kamalachenkan achyuta amararere ayartham kolunde ennum ichuvaittavira yanpoi. When he describes the beauty, the Rupa Lavanyam of the Lord who reclines on the serpent couch at Srirangam, he tells, the one whose body is as green as the emerald of a large mountain, Pachai, which is green, Mamalai is a stone or a hill, Pol Meni, his body is as green hued as the emerald. Pavalavai, his lips are as red hued as the corals. Kamala Shenkan, his beautiful eyes represent the blossoming lotus petals. So we have associated nature, the flora and the fauna with the beauty of the Lord. So coming back to Ramayana, with the multi-disciplines that I'm just going to brief you about, the first that I'm going to take is philosophy, the Siddhantam. Of the Brahma Vidyas that we know, which are 32 in number, our Acharyas have considered one of them very, very important, which is Nyasa Vidya. Nyasa means to abandon. So for the Jivatma to reach or attain Paramatma, to attain Sayujyam, the Jivatma, when it is housed in the Pancha Bhautika Shariram, which is the material body, has to resort to an Upayam, which is the means. The means are multifold. The destination, the Upayam, could be the same. What is the Upayam? As Nyasa Vidya suggests, it is Pancha Angika Sharanagati. Anukulyasya sankalpam, pratikulyasya varjanam, rakshishyati iti vishwasaha, goptrutva varanam, karpanyam. The 5 angas of Sharanagati are this. So what is the Angi? The Angi is the self-surrender, the surrender of the self, which is the Jivatma, housed in the body, to Paramatma, with all these 5 Angams. Now, if Sharanagati is treated as the byproduct or even the main product of Nyasa Vidya, is it practiced in Ramayanam? Yes. There is one work called as Abhaya Pradanasaram of the 13th century CE, which commemorates the Ramayanam itself as a literature that talks about the philosophy of unconditional self-surrender. In Balakandam, in the first canto, the Devas, the celestials, surrender at the feet of the Lord because they were tormented by the antisocial elements called the Rakshasas, who were living in different parts of the earth, from Dandakaranyam to Sri Lanka. And the celestials who were tormented wanted the Lord to restore dharmam and normalcy and annihilate the evil or the demoniac forces. Siddhagandharva yakshasta tatastvam sharanam gataha. Devasura samara samaya samuditya nikhila nirjara nirdharita niravadhika mahatmya dashavadana damita daivata parishada bhyartita dasharati bhavatinakara kula kamala divakara divishada dipati rana sahacharana chatura dasharata charama runa vimochana, says Vedanta Deshika. So the Devas surrendered at the feet of the Lord in Kshirabdi, in the Milky Ocean, where the Lord said, don't worry, I will be born. So the concept of Sharanagati in the Indian philosophy is exhibited by the Devas. The Lord accepts it. Later, while Vishwamitra's Charitram legend is being told to us in Balakandam, there are close to 15 chapters, if I remember it right, between 39 and 54, if I remember it. I could be wrong. These are the sargas that discuss Vishwamitra Charitram. In Vishwamitra Charitram, Vishwamitra, whose nephew, which is Vishwamitra's sister Satyavati's son Jamadagni had a son called Shunashepa. So the Shunashepa was to be sacrificed in a yajna. It was human sacrifice. That is when Vishwamitra teaches him to recite the 2 mantras from Rigveda that commemorate the Rigvedic deities. And while the boy listens to Vishwamitra and surrenders at the feet of the Rigvedic deities, the deities give him asylum and he is not sacrificed. That is the second example of Sharanagati. Third, at the close of Balakandam, Dasharatha seeks the forgiveness from Parashurama and surrenders at his feet, so that he asks Parashurama to save his son Rama from his wrath. Parashurama doesn't accept. So there is Sharanagati, but there is failure, because the person to whom it was performed was not worthy enough of seeking asylum at. Next, in Ayodhya Kandam, we come across Lakshmana, who performed Sharanagati at the feet of Rama and Sita. Sabhratus charanau gadham nipidya raghunandanaha Sitam uvacha atishayam raghavam cha mahavratam aham sarvam karishyami jagrataha swapataschate. So he performs Sharanagati to serve the divine couple. So his Sharanagati is successful. Later, towards the close of Ayodhya Kandam, Bharata comes and seeks asylum at the feet of Rama, telling that I would like to serve you, you should be back to Ayodhya. Rama says, I'll accept your Sharanagati, but it will be a delayed acceptance. After 14 years, I will come back to Ayodhya. So he gives Padukas as a temporary consolation to Bharata. In Aranya Kandam, Nagarastho Vanastho Va Tvamno Raja Janeshwaraha, the rishis who were suffered at the hands of the demons in Janasthana surrender at the feet of Rama, seeking his asylum. So later, with the Karadushanadi Trishiras Yuddham, Rama is able to make that Sharanagati succeed. Next, in Kishkinda Kandam, we have a mudra, the Anjali mudra, Anjalim Parama Mudram Kshipram Devah Prasadini. While Sugriva understands that he had delayed the process of letting his monkeys go in search of Sita, and while he sees that with the wrath of Lakshmana, the monkeys were running hither and thither, he seeks forgiveness from Lakshmana by putting his palms together. While he surrendered at the feet of Vali for having ruled the kingdom without his permission, his Sharanagati is not accepted by Vali. Later in Sundarakandam, Sita narrates what had happened in Ayodhya Kandam, where while they were housed in Chitrakuta, the son of Indra, called the Kaka, tried to torment her physically, and that is when the crow found no other means but to surrender at the feet of Rama. Trin lokan samparikramya tameva sharanam gataha. As a mark of showing what an assault is, Rama had to take one of its eyes. The Tamil poet says, Shittiraguda tirpa shirukkakai mulai tinda attirame kondodi vittagane ramavo ninnabhayam yennalaipa attirame adan kannai aruttadumor adayalam, tells Periyalvar or Vishnu Chitta. Later, while Trijata, the daughter of Vibhishana, asks the demonesses in Lanka to not torment Sita and seek asylum at their feet, even without them asking, Sita tells, Alamesha Paritratum, if Rama wins over the war, nothing will happen to you, I will give assurance. So their Sharanagati was accepted even before performing. In Yuddhakandam, we come across two Sharanagatis. One is where Vibhishana, after having abandoned his brother for his bad conduct, he seeks asylum at the feet of Rama, which is a complete Sharanagati with all the 5 Angas present. And next is a Sharanagati where Rama tries it out to the Ocean King for seeking permission for an eco clearance to construct the bridge. While he is not done, he gets angry and he says, Chapamanaya Saumitre, get me my bow and the quiver of arrows. So, performing it to an Achetana Vastu will not help, says Vedanta Deshika. So, beginning from Balakandam to Yuddhakandam, we have a list of Sharanagatis, some of which were successful, some of which were delayed, some of which were not successful. So, this concept of Sharanagati has been beautifully interspersed and interwoven in Ramayana, and this becomes a part of Brahma Vidya called Nyasa Vidya, which is Siddhantam or philosophy. So, philosophy is a discipline that you can study in Ramayana. Second, let's move to theology. Theology is a belief system. When you have certain rituals, externally, internally, and you have a code of conduct along with the agamas, then you come across with a theology. You have Shaivam. So along with Shaivam or Shaivism, you have Shaiva Agama. You have Vaishnavism or Vaishnava Agama. For example, Shaiva Agama, scholars say, opine that there are over 28. Like Nakulisha, Kalamukham, Pashupatam and so on. So they base it on Pashu, Pati and Pasham. That's the agamic science of Shaivism. If you look at Vaishnavism, the agamic sciences are primarily two in number, the very famous ones, Pancharatram and Vaikhanasam. So based on the Agama and the Nigama, Vaishnavism or Shaivism is formulated. You have other systems as well like Shaktism, Garnapatyam, Kaumaram and Shauram. We are not getting into that. But in Shaivism and Vaishnavism, you see a larger chunk of Vaishnavism being projected in Ramayana. For example, the Sharanagati that was performed by the celestials were performed to the Lord in Kshirabdi, to Narayana. So it translates into Vaishnavism. Bhoja Raja and Bhoja Champu writes a beautiful verse on how the Lord opened his eyes. So they give beautiful similes and metaphors denoting the beauty of Narayana. Later in Yuddha Kandam, you come across a shloka. Brahma Swayam Bhus Chaturananova Rudras Trinetras Tripurantakova Indro Mahendras Suranayakova Tratumna Shakya Yudhi Ramavadyam. So since Rama is treated as Vishnu himself, the comparison is made to Brahma, Shiva, Indra and others. Brahma Swayam Bhus Chaturananova Rudras Trinetras Tripurantakova Indro Mahendras Suranayakova Tratumna Shakya Yudhi Ramavadyam. Likewise, we come across Shabari seeing the Lord as Narayana, Jatayu seeing the Lord as Narayana, and so on. While Vaishnavism and its tenets may have been given importance, Shaivism is no less. For example, when Rama had to fight the demons in Dandakaranyam, especially in Janasthanam, it is told that like how Shiva fought in Shvetaranyam. Shveta Aranyam is in Tamil translated as Vengadu. Tiruvengadu is a sthalam for Lord Shiva near Shirgari in Tamil Nadu. So, the tenets of Vaishnavism, references to Shaivism, and one reference which is slightly controversial, which is Aditya Hridayam. Aditya Hridayam is one of the very famous hymns towards Surya as told by Rama. It is found in the versions. We have many ascensions to Ramayana, the northwestern, the southern, the eastern. So we have Aditya Hridayam, but many scholars, traditional scholars who have commented in the past, like even Govindaraja and Bhushanam, regards this as an inserted portion. At times they call it Prakshiptam. So he says, I'm going to comment on Aditya Hridayam because it is famous, but I have been told that it is not a part of original Valmiki's Ramayana. Nevertheless, if we regard Aditya Hridayam, then it talks of Surya worship, which is Shauram, be it the Konark temple of Odisha, be it the Modhera temple of Sun temple in Gujarat, be it the Sun temple of Harshavali in Andhra Pradesh, be it the Sun temple of Martanda Surya temple of the Karkota dynasty in Kashmir. So there is a mode for Shiva worship, so thereby Shauram also comes into picture. So we have discussed a Siddhantam, which is philosophy, one discipline. We have briefly spoken about theology, which is Vaishnavism, Shaivism or Shauram. Next, I will be taking you across to astrology. Remember, when we speak of Vedam as the foundation, Vedas are best understood with two factors, state our acharyas. One is Vedangam. Second is Upangam. Vedangam is directly the ancillary parts to Vedam, which are 6 in number. You have 4 Vedas, you have 6 Angas. Kalpam, Jyotisham, Vyakaranam, Chandas, Niruktam and so on. So these are all called as Vedangam. So if you have a good understanding and knowledge and practice of Vedangam, understanding of Vedas along with Vedanta becomes easier. And coupled with Vedas and Vedangas, if you read the Upangam, it becomes much more easier. For example, Dhanurveda, Ayurveda, Gandharva Vedya and so on. So in the Upangam of Vedam is one interesting Upangam called Jyotisham. Today for us Jyotisham could bring many bells in our minds. 1, an astrologer. 2, a person who may give wrong predictions. 3, a person who will want to extract money from us. Could be or could not be true. Because it's a human society, we know how bad or dirty humans can get. But as a science in itself, Jyotishya Shastram is a very, very revered science. Now that I'm your speaker, I would like to tell of 2 or 3 words about my grandfather, my maternal grandfather. He was a full-time employee with the State Bank of India. He joined it during the days of Imperial Bank. Both my grandmother and grandfather were very, very responsible for my childhood and boyhood days. They completely stayed with me during my nurturing period. He was also an astrologer because he learnt the nuances of astrology from his ancestors. So, not practicing as a profession, but he would still entertain a lot of people come home and they would show their horoscopes. Horoscope is a Jatakam in the south of India. In the north of India, we call it the Kundli. So, you can call them predictions, or he would foretell based on their horoscope. But he would say, remember, I'm basing it on what you have shown, because we don't know whether it was the exact time of birth, because a second or a minute is enough for the tithi to change, for the nakshatram to change, for the padam to change, because not every nakshatram, asterism, is found in the same rashi. So for example, 2 padas of a nakshatra could come in one rashi, the next 2 could come in the next rashi, 3 could come in one rashi, 1 could go to another rashi, all 4 padas could stay in the same rashi. So he used to state, given what your information to me, I am basing it on that. And second thing he used to say, just because I am predicting, it doesn't mean it will happen. It may. There is always a big divine factor that is beyond the Jyotishya Shastram that will play a role, he used to say. So likewise, Jyotishya Shastram is a very revered science. People used to go to a Pathashala, read the Jyotishya Shastram under an Acharya, get themselves super qualified to even hold the horoscope of another person. Unlike today, where you can get about 3-4 guides on astrology, you can either become a very good one, or you could turn out to be a dubious one with your modes of interpretation. But Jyotishya Shastram is very respected. Now let me take you to Ramayana. In Ramayana, it is said Tatascha Dvadashe Mase Chaitre. Here is where you get some data for creating a horoscope. Chaitre. So Rama was born in the month of Chitra. Chaitre. Navami Ketithau. Navami Ketithau is a Navami Tithi. So the Tithi is known. Nakshatre Aditi Daivatye. In what star was he born? So every constellation is ruled by a deity, a devata. Nakshatre Aditi Daivatye. So the nakshatra which is ruled by Aditi. What is that nakshatra? Punaha Vasu Punarvasu. So Punarvasu nakshatram. So Nakshatre Aditi Daivatye Swachcha Samstheshu Panchasu. Then he describes which are all the grahams which are exalted in which rashi. Generally in Jyotishya Shastram, if you take up a horoscope, there will be at least one nakshatram, one graha which will be exalted. It's called Uchasthanam. So it is said in Jyotishya Shastram that if you have one graham exalted, you're good. 2, very good. 3, very, very good. And then 4, very unique. 5th, you're a world leader. So, it is said in Jyotishya Shastram, Panchauche Lokanayakaha. If 5 grahas are exalted, you're a world leader. So here Valmiki gives us what are the grahams. If I remember the Jatakam of Rama right, Surya, Angaraka, Shanaishchara, Shukra, and one more graham, I don't remember. 5 grahas are in the exalted state. Now, besides this, he also mentions about the other 2 grahams, Chandra and Brihaspati. So Chandra and Brihaspati are in the same house of Rama's Jatakam. And Ketu is found in the next house. So the commentator Govindaraja tells, by saying this, Valmiki beautifully hints that Rama has just escaped Kemadruma Yogam. So Kemadruma Yogam is an aspect in astrology. I am not getting into it deeper. Kemadruma Yogam is said that when the 2nd or the 10th or 12th place from Chandra is vacant, then you fall into Kemadruma Yogam is what I remember. I could be wrong. See, I am not a practicing astrologer, nor have I learnt it the formal way. Whatever discussions I have eavesdropped while my grandfather used to discuss is what I am discussing now. So, because he has escaped Kemadruma Yogam, even if there is a calamity that has struck Rama's life, it will appear as a calamity, but over a period of time it will go away. Simple Sita's abduction by Ravana. So it seemed very disturbing that Rama rescues her back. So that is for every aspect. Chaitre, Navami Tithi, there are predictions made by the commentators. So astrology becomes very, very important. Let me take you, though we are discussing Ramayana, I'll take you to Bhagavatam. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said that for Krishna, while he was born, again 5 grahas were at the exalted state. For Rama, it was Surya. But for Krishna, it becomes Chandra. Then there is, if I'm right, there's Buddha. And then there is Shanaishchara and so on. And in Krishna's birthday, you'll remember, especially Krishna's birthday is referred to by a very interesting name. It's called Shri Jayanti or Krishna Jayanti. Jayanti doesn't mean birthday in Sanskrit. Please take this misnomer out. Generally we associate it as Gandhi Jayanti, Ambedkar Jayanti, fine. But Jayanti in Sanskrit doesn't mean birthday. Jayanti is a specific period when it is Shravana Masam, the month is Shravan, and it must be Krishna Paksham. It must be the waning phase. From Paurnami to Amavasya is the waning phase. That is Krishna Paksham. And in that you have Ashtami Tithi. And in that Ashtami Tithi, if it's ruled by Rohini Nakshatram, so it must be Shravana Masam, Krishna Paksham, Ashtami Tithi, Rohini Nakshatram. Then in these 4 combination, if you get that day, that Muhurtam is called as Jayanti. So Jayanti Sambhavandhama, when Krishna was born, there is a beautiful astrological prediction. So Jayanti is that Muhurtam, not anybody's birthday. Now let me come back to Ramayana. So there is a prediction about astrology as well. Now I'll take you to another Shastram. In Indian civilization, we believe in omens. How do I understand omens? The great Paramacharya of Kanchi used to state that if you denote the movement of objects around you while they fly. So what are the objects that fly? When I say objects, living things. Now don't take an aeroplane and a helicopter or the parachute. So let's assume the birds. So the movement of the birds to some extent have an effect on the outcome of the events or happenings in my life if I'm looking at them. Is a belief. Now don't ask me where is a patent. So Shaku in Shastram, in Sanskritam, denotes a bird. So when there is a movement of a bird and then you predict, it's called Shakuna Shastram. Whereas anything beyond this, the movement of the deer, the cat, the bull, whatever you consider around on earth, you base it, then it's called Nimittam. In Srimad Ramayana, we come across 2 major instances. There are many, I'm just showing you 2. While the marriage party, Rama having got married to Sita, Lakshmana to Urmila, Mandavi and Bharata, Shrutakirti and Shatrughna, along with the father, along with the priests, that while they were marching from Mithila Nagaram, Mithilopavanam towards Ayodhya, it is said that Dasharatha sensed the sound of certain creatures and he saw a deer going in the left, if I remember, it comes in Ayodhya, in Balakandam. That is when he was worried and he asked the priest who said, see, it does appear that there is going to be something which is undesirable that's going to happen. But do not worry, we also see signs of that undesirable thing that is going to happen moving away at the same speed. So you will be relieved of it as well. That is when Parashurama comes, he makes them uncomfortable and later Rama gives it back in its own style. Kratuhara shikhari kantuka vihrutyunmuka jagadiruntu dajita haridanti danta danturo ronta dashavadana manakushala dashashata bhujamuka rupati kula rudira jara bharita prututara tataka tatpita pitrika bhugupati sugati vihatikara nata parudishu pariga, tells Vedanta Deshika. So here we have to some extent omens determining. It's called Kalartham. Whether we believe in that or not, whether we discard that or not, whether we call it very undesirable or not is our opinion. Vedic civilization doesn't insist on anybody accepting its point of view. As much as you're entitled to your point of view, so am I. If we call liberty, if we call it the freedom of expression, I'm sure Vedic civilization had given it long years back. Probably they didn't call it by the terms that we use. Here, getting back to the Shastram, later when Rama agrees to help rescue Sugriva's wife Ruma from the clutches of Vali, Sugriva, in agreement to Rama's deal, says that once he rescues, he will supply the monkey army to Rama to go in search of Sita. So this was their understanding. So as a mark to commemorate this deal, they went around the fire. So as Rama and Sugriva went around the fire as a memorandum of understanding, there is a beautiful shloka given to us by Valmiki. He says, Sita kapindra kshanada charanam Rajiva hemojvalanopamani Sugriva Rama pranaya prasange Vamani netrani samam sfuranti. So the left eyes of three people winked simultaneously, it seems, while these two went around the fire. Who are those people? Sita, who is Mother Sita. Kapindraha, Kapinam Indraha, the one who is the leader of all monkeys, who was then Vali. Kshanad Acharanam, the people who walk in the night, nocturnal in nature, are Rakshasas. So the head, the chief of all Rakshasas at that point in time was Ravana. Sita Kapindra Kshanada Charanam. Now he is describing their left eyes. How are their left eyes? He has to give a simile. Rajiva Hema Ujjvala. So Sita's eyes was like the blossoming lotus, Rajiva. Vali's was like that of gold, molten gold. For Ravana it was like blazing fire. Rajiva Hema Ujjvala na Upamani. Besides this, nobody else will be able to find a simile, says Valmiki. But when Sugriva Rama Pranaya Prasange, when Sugriva and Rama went around the fire, then Vamani Netrani Samam Sfuranti, the left eye winked simultaneously to all the three people. Why should the left eye wink? Here is where Shakuna Shastram and Nimitta Shastram tells that for the woman, the left hand side of the body is deemed slightly more auspicious. Whereas for the man, it is the right hand side. Even in Ardhanari Ishvara, you see Lord Shiva on the right and Parvati on the left. Let's take what the Shastram tells. Now for the woman, it's good, the left hand side. The man, it is bad. So if Rama and Sugriva are going around the fire, what will be the outcome? Then Vali will die. So Vali's left eye winked. If Vali dies and there is no scope of having allies and Rama marches forward and fights Ravana, Ravana will die. So Ravana's left eye winked. If Ravana is dead, then Sita will be rescued. For Sita, it is good time. So her left eye winked. So Vamani Netrani Samam Sfuranti. Or for all three of them, it blinked simultaneously, tells Valmiki. So there is a reference to this Shastram as well. Now let me take you to another discipline. So we have spoken about Siddhantam, philosophy, we have spoken about theology, we have spoken about astrology, Jyotishya Shastram. Then there is reference for Shakunam and Nimittam. Next I'm going to take you to another interesting aspect, though very brief, about metals. So we speak of Mendeleev's table now, who gave us this Mendeleevian table. So he has clustered it into metals, non-metals, metalloids. So we could have alkali metals, alkaline earth metals, then we could have the non-metals completely. Then there are metalloids, for example, the silica, if I'm right, germanium, I think all of that comes under metalloids, I think. Then we have lanthanides and actinides. Then in the non-metals, we have the inert gases. So we have beautifully clustered them and formulated them, correct? Now when we do so, we should be aware that when Mendeleev presents this table to us, when Mendeleev gives us this table, he beautifully states what are the properties of each of the metals. So let's take gold. For any metal, there is malleability and to a large extent ductility which is associated. So if you take up malleability and ductility, ability to be drawn into sheets and wires, we have many metals coming into picture. Let's take two metals which have very, very holy regard in the Vedic civilization. One is gold and the other one is silver. So traditionally, gold is believed to be the metal that can relieve a person of any debt he has towards the celestials. It's called Deva Rinam. Likewise, silver can help a person relieved of any Rinam, debt towards Pitras, forefathers. It's called Pitra Rinam. So because of this Rinam, it is believed Dasharatha did not have children, though he had a daughter Shanta and she was given in adoption to another king of Rome called Romapada. He wanted more children. So to do this, he performed the Ashwamedha Yajnam and later Putrakameshti Yajnam. When the Payasam emerged from the Yajna with the Yajna Purusha's hands, here it is very clearly stated it came in a golden pot with a silver lid. I remember it could be topsy-turvy also, golden pot with a silver lid. So gold is mentioned very clearly. So and gold is denoted by various names here. Hema, Hataka, Kanaka, Swarna, Suvarna. So there is one research that is happening which denotes what are the various words used for gold, which is aurum, AU. Next is argentum, which is silver. Again silver lid, because in Vedic civilization, even now in most of the traditional houses, when we have food, we have it on silver plates. So silver, argentum is used. So the knowledge about metals existed. So we don't have to just go till the times of the dancing woman, the bronze image in the Indus Valley, Indus Valley civilization. It went much before. Valmiki mentions of the metals. So there is to some extent knowledge of metals. Whether they used it or not, we do not know, because there is one mention of worshipping of the idol. It goes like this: Aradhaya Jagannatham Ikshvaku Kula Daivatam. The family deity of Ikshvakus, whose Ranganatha, Jagannatha, was worshipped. So this is to some extent a superficial understanding of metals. Now let's take up with Vedic sciences itself, especially with respect to rituals. So you have Ashwamedha Mahayajnam described in detail about the horse, the needles that were used to make the scratches, and then you've got the Prayogam of Putrakameshti. Then with indication, the commentators state that Dasharatha must have belonged to Shukla Yajurvedam, whereas the Rishishringa must have performed the Putrakameshti based on Atharvana Vedam. Then we have Vishwamitra, who's performing the Yajnam for 6 nights. He's waiting for the Purnahuti. That is when he wants Rama's assistance to drive away the demons. Later we come across the rituals described like Samavartanam, Nandi Shraddham, and then you've got the Suvarna Palika. So you've got all these rituals that form a part of a marriage being described. So when it comes to Prayogam, it is described. Now later in Yuddha Kandam you will see how Rama commands Vibhishana to perform the last rites of Ravana from the Agnihotra Agni, which was performed by Ravana. So there is immense discipline. If you take yagas, homas, havans, rituals as a discipline, there is mention about that. Now while they walk in the forest, there is a beautiful description of the variety of trees, of the variety of flowers that blossom, the variety of fruits. Later when they all swoon on the battleground of Lanka, Garuda Pandita comes and tells Hanuman to get 4 kinds of herbs: Santanakarani, Vishalyakarani, Sandhani and Mrita Sanjeevani. He tells they are at the foothills of Himalayas between Rishabha Parvatam, beyond our reach. So there are 4 different kinds of herbs with specifications which are described. So it talks about Ayurveda Shastram. Supportive of Ayurveda Shastram is a tale of Kurmavataram, which is narrated to Rama by Vishwamitra, where he tells a different kind of Rasayanam emerged out of the churning. Rasayanam in Ayurveda Shastram is described as that which keeps a person free from diseases and does not show him or her aging. So it's like the anti-wrinkle cream that we all know of. So it's something like that called the Rasayanam. So Rasayanam, the different herbs, the different flowers, the different trees. So they all speak about their knowledge in botany, in medical science of Ayurveda, their knowledge of the flora and the fauna. So One more aspect that I would like to bring into picture is from philosophy we understand that Paramatma is beyond the states of matter. When we describe water, so generally when we drink water in its liquid state. But to a person who has got a clot and who wants some pain relief, we give him ice cubes. So water is shown or given or presented to him in the solid state. Suppose a person wants to have a clean up on the face or wants to get some relief from cough and cold. He would like to have a steam. And that steam comes to the person in the gaseous state. So an object can exist in all the three states but can be consumed in one of the states. But when we deal with Paramatma or Bhagavan, he has to be in all these states and beyond these states. So the Tamil poet Kamban, who has given the regional version of Ramayana, one of the earliest versions of Ramayana in the Indian languages besides Sanskritam, is Kamban's Tamil Ramayanam. Of course, externally we have the Javanese Kakavin Ramayanam, but here we have Kamba Ramayanam, where he describes the external characteristics of Rama. He tells, Veyyonnoli tanmeniyil virijodiyil maraya, Puyyo yenumidayaaludu milayanunu ponanadu mayyo marikadalo malai mugilo. When I describe Rama's hue, because Rama was dark, so Kamban tells, I'm waiting for Rama to come out in the sunlight. When Rama walks in the broad daylight, he tells, I want to describe Rama's color. He says, Mayyo, is he like the collyrium, Anjanam? So we use itex, right? So that is Anjanam. In fact, in Islam, men have the habit of sporting kajal, Anjanam. So he says, is Rama's color as dark as the kajal, the collyrium? Mari Kadalo, is it like the blue waters? Of course, we know the waters of ocean aren't blue exactly, but they appear blue. So in quantum physics or chemistry, we'll deal with Schrodinger's equation and we'll have a 10-mark question. Let's park that aside. But here we have the sea waters that generally appear blue to us. So is he that color? Malai Mugilo, is he like the vapor that surrounds or surmounts the clouds, rain-bearing clouds? So, Mai, which is a collyrium, is generally, though it may seem a bit greasy, you can treat that as solid. Next is oceanic waters, which is water, liquid state. Next is vapor in the clouds, that is gaseous state. So, Kamban tells, I am not able to say whether he is as dark as the collyrium, whether he is as blue as the oceanic waters, whether he is as grey as the vapors in the cloud, or beyond that. Because Paramatma has to be beyond. So there is an understanding amongst the regional poets about the science that operates as well. So he describes Rama beyond the three states of matter. Mayyo, Marikadalo, Malai Mugilo, Ayyo. Ivan Alagu or Varnikkave Iyalada or Alagu in Tamil. That means this beauty is beyond description. So we have philosophy, we have theology, we have astrology, we have the Shakunam and the Nimitta Shastram, we have to some extent a very superficial introduction to metallurgy, we have some knowledge of botany and Ayurveda, we have knowledge about Prayoga, especially in terms of Shrautam and rituals, in terms of states of matter. Of course, there is a huge role of psychology that plays. If psychology was a subject, I think Ramayana will be the best study for research for any student. Because it is with psychological tantrums that Manthara, who comes all the way from Kaikeya Desham, tries to manipulate Kaikeyi's mind, who till then was absolutely loving towards Rama. So psychology has a great role to play. Devotion, bhakti. If Bharata's bhakti is an example, Bharataya param namostu tasmai prathamodaharanaya bhakti bhajam, says Vedanta Deshika. Sukshma roop dhari si ahi dikhava, bigada roop dhari lank jarava, bhima roop dhari asur sahare, Ramachandra ke kaj savare, laya sajivan, Lakhan jiyaye, Shri Raghubir harashi urlaye, Raghupati kini bahut badai, tum mama priya bharata samabhai. So when we speak of Hanuman's devotion, how less is it than Bharata's devotion? Bharata, Hanuman, Shabari, Jatayu, they all become exemplifications for bhakti. So we have Bhakti Shastra. We have Sharanagati Shastram. So overall, when we take up Vedic literature, it is just not the biography of Rama whose wife was kidnapped, he went and rescued. There is some engineering involved. Let's take the construction of the Setu. If the monkeys have to walk, they can't walk on water. We believe that we can't walk on water, right? We need some solid place for us to walk. So the way they used the oceanic ridge that was naturally available between that stretch of India and Lanka, how wooden pieces, large heavy wooden logs were used to cover the first layer, then the larger rocks, the smaller rocks. So it was a very well formulated and an engineered way of constructing the bridge. If engineering is a science, then I'm sure the monkeys and the leader, the masonry work that was done was an example. So in each of these sciences that we all appreciate today, Valmiki has tried to intersperse all of them and give us a beautiful work. Just not Valmiki. Let's take Vyasa's Mahabharata, Shukabrahmam's Bhagavatam, later literature. We are talking about a variety. So right from Ayodhya, during his internship days, if he has gone to Vaishala, Rajgir, he's been described about Kanauj, Kaushambi, then Sankasya, which was the place where Kushadhwaja lived, then Mithilopavana and Mithila, Nepal, and then he comes across Shringiberapura, Bharadwaja Ashrama, and then he comes across Tamasa, then Triveni Sangamam, then he comes down to Godavari, to river Godavari, to Nashik Panchavati, to Hampi, to Pampa Lake, and further down to Mahendragiri, to Tamil Nadu, to Rameshwaram, to Tirupulani, to Lanka. Is this not cartography? Is this not topography? Is this not geography? So to conclude, all that I can say is Ramayana, of course every piece of other Vedic literature. Now for our example, Ramayana, right from philosophy to theology to botany to Ayurveda to Shakuna Nimitta Shastram to Prayoga Shastram to a basic understanding of metallurgy to human psychology to engineering to geography, cartography, topography, we have it all. So each of these pieces of literature should be approached with such a thought that it is just not a story, but it has various other teachings for us which we must learn as ardent students and followers of this age-old, liberal, very, very made to think kind of a Vedic civilization. I'm thankful for having given me the opportunity to speak on this. If I have committed any mistakes during my delivery, kindly forgive me. Ajnanina maya doshan aseshan bhitan hare kshamaswatvam seshashaila shikhamane kavitarkika simhaya kalyana gunashalini Srimate Venkateshaya Vedanta Gurave Namaha. Namaskar.
Thank you, Dushyanth. That was simply amazing, and you've brought together so many different points from just even a single text like the Ramayana. Lucy ji will join us in a quick discussion. Namaste, Lucy ji, again.
Pranam.
Dushyanth ji has covered a lot of ground from philosophy to language to theology. And we are very blessed today to have people from two very holy lands, Lucy ji from Varanasi and Dushyanth ji from hailing from the land of temples of South India, Kanchipuram. And the energy of these two places definitely seems to radiate from both of them. Lucy ji, would you like to give us your first impressions on the talk?
It was absolutely scintillating. I mean, the way that Dushyanth has taken us through from the very beginning to the end of all of the different disciplines in such a clear way. I mean, I love how he brought us from the Vedas, then the Upramanam, the Itihas, the Purana, and then taking us into the beautiful description he gave of Vishnu was really magical. And I think that is how you cross from the beautiful philosophy into the practicalities of nature. Because if you look at Prakriti, the Pra being the Sataguna, the Kri being the Rajaguna, and the Ti being the Tamaguna, you saw this expressed through the nature in that description he gave of Vishnu, which was simply, there's no other word but divine. And I'm sure that everyone felt the magic as he chanted each of the mantras and the slokas as he went through everything. And coming down then into the 32 Brahma Vidyas, and then taking the specific example of the Ramayana was perfect. And as he said, you know, all of these multidisciplinary approaches, you can see whether you take the Bhagavatam or the Mahabharata or Valmiki's Ramayana. And Valmiki Ramayana, being the Adi Kavi, of course, is the ideal example to take. Of course, Ram being the ideal in itself, was so clear. He took everything so step by step, introducing what the actual discipline is, and then bringing it with a practical example was the ideal scientific approach. And that's something that is so important to express about the Shastras, whatever discipline you look at, is that it is so clear cut, it's so scientific, and it's so vibration oriented that it simply is. It's not something that is open to interpretation when you go down to the individual point. So like going with the philosophy, and philosophy, of course, meaning the lover of truth. So the Ramayana, even if you just read the Mul Ramayana, the introduction part of the Ramayana, you get this infusion of this philosophy that goes through every single text, whatever text you look at, whether it's the Yoga Darshan or whether it's Mahabharata or whether it's the Valmiki Ramayana. There is an energy being sent through to you that maybe you don't understand it at that very moment in time, but there is this latent energy just waiting to be unlocked. So you have the story on the top, and then you have the underlying discipline, you know, as you said, the theology, the philosophy, the metallurgy, etc. And then you have that underlying adhyatmic energy that is the very cause of every level of it. So I think that you couldn't have had a better speaker to go through every step for us, going then through the theology, and then the Jyotish was absolutely fascinating, because of course we're aware of the Kshetra, the Nakshatra aspects, and how this Jyotish, which is the Vedangam, part of the Vedangams, and then the Upanyasakars, but the bits about the 5 exalted grahas, even that was something that I was thinking, oh my, I have to look more into that. And again, I'm going to use the word magical, because there is, you know, these granthas, it's not like Valmiki sat down and he just mapped out, you know, if we're writing our PhD, we write out what chapters we're going to write and then the constituent parts of each of those. Valmiki didn't sit down and think about, right, what disciplines am I going to cover, and which kanda which canto am I going to include them in which chapter. This is like a flow of divine energy that is manifested through Valmiki, which further adds to the wonder of the construction of the Valmiki Ramayana, and talking as well about the meaning of the Jayanti, as he so beautifully pointed out, is that it referring to the Ashrani Muhurta within the Ashtami, which is within the Krishna Paksha, which was within the month of Shravan. Of course, that's on the southern Nikshatra and Jyotish system. But it is brings us just back to also the very precise meaning of every single word that you get in the Ramayana, that there is something very particular being imparted from a particular aspect of a different discipline, wherever you look within that. And going on to the Kala Artham, it's so beautiful examples that he gave, and the explanation of the Ashukuni Shastra, which some people may have even seen referred to in media this week. Even ordinary people in this point of time are referring to the Shukuni Shastra, and the idea of the deer moving down the left-hand side, and then the movement of the other animals, bringing together that yes, there was danger coming, but it would be very short-lived danger. Once again, the beauty of the Ramayana, but also the depth of understanding of Dushyanth being able to express in just an hour from the beginning of the Ramayana to the end of the Ramayana, and being able to pick out all of these multi-disciplines, expresses also his clarity and his depth of understanding. And when I say depth of understanding, I mean the proximity to the source of this energy, because to be able to understand any of these texts requires you to be able to give an accurate description of any of these texts, requires you to be at the vibration of the person that has given this text. And I think that they shouldn't be underestimated in terms of where Dushyanth energy is at, being able to channel and understand the Shastras to the depth that he did, and bringing in the metallurgy, brings also our understanding of how multidisciplined he is, because although I've studied metallurgy as initially as an undergraduate and a postgraduate and doing research on it, that's a very, very, very rare thing to have knowledge of. Then through the rituals, the botany, through the Ayurveda, and it was also fascinating how he brought in the very old language of Tamil into the discussion as well. And one of the things that I really loved, of course, was the psychology, and this side, the elements of psychology, the teachings of psychology, is something that underpins whether you look at the Samhita, the Brahmanas, the Aranyaks, the Upanishads, who are the Upanishads are really very clear on psychology and how to control the mind. And then you move through then the Puranas, which express it further, and then Valmiki Ramayana, which becomes so transparent on the terms of psychology. And it shows as well how important psychology is in the whole Bharatiya Sanskriti, and being a key factor of how we find this peace, happiness, and moksha, dharma, kama mokshanam. And then the description of the building of the Ram Setu, he doesn't limit it just to the fact that there existed the bridge between Tamil Nadu and Sri Lanka, but the building up, the engineering stages of that he, gave us, and then the geography. I mean, that is something that has fascinated me as well in so many different of the texts that we go to, that the geography is of the entire area of Bharat, even in such ancient times when we didn't have possibly the kind of transport systems that enable you to just pop on a plane and see so many different places. The knowledge of geography, whether it's in the Puranas, as in Valmiki Ramayana, or Skanda Purana, which is so elaborate in its description of Kashi. The knowledge of the geography in ancient times is extraordinary, even going to Kalhan's Rajatarangani, which is not so old, but again, a very accurate description of geography. And of course, he concluded with the reality is that no story is just a story. And I think that is the crux of the Sahitya, going from the Vedic Sahitya to the more modern Sahitya, that in every time, in every period, we're given a new, you can say like a revamping of the same kind of stories to reach the ultimate goal of what life is all about, which is, going from the left bank of the river to the right bank of the river, the birth and the death, with the river flowing in between, which is described in the Upanishads. And with so many different ways of approaching with a story, we're given a way for everybody to find their way, whether it's through the Samhita, the Brahmanas, the Aranyakas, the Upanishads, the Puranas, through the Itihas, the poetry and history of Valmiki Ramayana and the Mahabharata with the Bhagavad Gita, and then going on to more modern texts. Everything is being constructed in a way that everybody finds their way to access that underlying philosophy. Initially, maybe just through the story, but the vibration is always there underlying, that is through the Sanskrit vibrating through you, having an effect on you that at some time is going to surely uncover the ultimate truth, that knowledge of that Paramatma, the Parabrahma, through stages that it manifests through. And that is why, great saints are always encouraging us to keep reading, even if it's just one book, to keep reading it again and again and again, because it will have a very real effect on you and the change in your energy. And I think that from start to finish, Shri Dushyanth Sridharji has brought this out simply, magically and divinely, and I'm so glad and lucky that I would, like all of you, were able to listen to that. And thank you so much for involving me, including me, inviting me to be on this beautiful platform and to be able to listen to his incredible knowledge today. Thank you so much. Pranam.
Akka, do we have time for one quick question? One more?
Yes, one quick question.
Yeah. Dushyanth Sridharji has launched an e-portal, and which is going to encompass and offer all of his knowledge to viewers. And Lucy ji, you also are involved with the Veda Pathshala. So Indian concepts of education are very different from the models that are existing now. And education was seen as bringing out what is already within us rather than being imposed top down. So how do you see the young little children in your Pathshala being transformed by this interdisciplinary nature of Indian Vedic wisdom?
It is absolutely amazing what kind of changes we see, because we're taking mostly children from villages, from quite difficult backgrounds, maybe sometimes even with learning difficulties, and we really are taking that concept of reduce to bring out the knowledge with the combination of the Vedic mantras with yoga sadhana, the asana, pranayam, pratyahara, dharan, dhyan, and samadhi. And we see, I don't know if anybody has seen pictures of our Pathshala, but you're taking these children and immersing in the sanskars, the Trikalik Sandhya, combined with the study with the sadhana, brings these radiant, beaming, I call them like the warriors of light, manifesting even in these modern times through these little children with their shikha and their dhotis. We don't have any other clothes. They only wear dhotis. They eat very simple foods, and life for them, we can see the wonder in their eyes as they see everything that's around them, and also the divinity that comes through them as they chant these ancient mantras. I don't know if anyone ever has a chance to listen to them chanting Rudra Abhishek, for example, or the Gita. The sound is just out of this world, and it shows us that the knowledge itself is ever new. Every period of time, it is as valid today as it was thousands of years ago, and it is as life-changing today as it was thousands of years ago. And it's just a question of bringing all these things according to one's capacity into your life. And I'm so blessed to be able to be part and parcel of this Vedic experience in these modern times. It was something that I was really looking for, but didn't know what it was that I was looking for, and found it through my exposure to the culture. And I wish that everybody would be able to touch on this, because this is what makes education real. Obviously, some people are going to be science specialists, but an aspect of this, I think, is key for being brought into every child's life, because this is the way that they can find peace and happiness in meaning in this life, because it never is going to come through money and worldly knowledge. It needs the balance of this deep spiritual knowledge as well, of why we're here and what we're doing with everything.
Thank you so much, Divya Prabhaji. We will be having one small video now of children chanting from Ireland. Kotiji, can you please play the video?
Ayam nijjah paroveti kanana laghu chetasam udara charitanam tu vasudhaiva kutumbakam aham khalu charanaiva aham tava snusha api udara charitanam tu vasudhaiva kutumbakam aham tu sharanartina aham tava sahodari udara charitanam tu vasudhaiva kutumbakam उदारचरितानां तु वसुधैव कुटुम्बकम् अहं वैदेशिकः नास्ति अहं तु तव मम च उदारचरितानां तु वसुधैव कुटुम्बकम् अहं तु भिन्नचर्मणा अहं तव किशोरः उदारचरितानां तु वसुधैव कुटुम्बकम् अहं तु तव मातुला उदारचरितानां तु वसुधैव कुटुम्बकम् अहं वन्दिना एव च अहं तु तव पुत्रिः उदारचरितानां तु वसुधैव कुटुम्बकम् अहं विशिष्टलिङ्गः न अहमपि तव भ्राता उदारचरितानां तु वसुधैव कुटुम्बकम् अहं खलु रुजनैव अहं तु तव मातुलः उदारचरितानां तु वसुधैव कुटुम्बकम् अहमेव अनाप्तः न अहं च तव पुत्रोऽस्मि उदारचरितानां तु वसुधैव कुटुम्बकम् अहं कर्मकारिणी अहं तव कुमारी च उदारचरितानां तु वसुधैव कुटुम्बकम् अयं निजः परो वेति गणना लघु चेतसाम् उदारचरितानां तु वसुधैव कुटुम्बकम्
Aparna, can you please announce the rest of the programs?
Just give me 2 minutes. Okay. Today afternoon, we have a Bollywood dance session. Just give me 2 minutes, please. Please do join us for a very unique Bollywood dance workshop with Kinga Malek of Poland. We all the details for all our workshops are available at our website www.softwaremag.com. Today evening, we also have 2 unique sessions. One is on timeless cinema, which will look at India's contribution to the worlds of film. India has the largest film industry in the world. So we have the ambassador of India to Canada, Shri Ajay Bisaria ji, who will be the special guest for that session. And we have Asim Chabra, who's written autobiographies of many Bollywood film actors, as well as he is a part of the New York Film Festival. We have Manoj Bajpai, and we have 2 Bollywood critics from Canada. This will be followed by another session called Frozen Moments, where we will be looking at images and sculpture from India and their aesthetic value. Please do look at all details are available on our website, and looking forward to having you join us for these sessions. Thank you for coming today.
And just a word about tomorrow morning session. We are going to have a half day of Ramayana tomorrow. So we have Upanyasam by none other than Srimati Vishaka Hari. And after that, we have Dr. Vijay Jaya, who's going to be singing the Ramanama in canvas of Carnatic ragas. And along with that, we would love for all the participants to color these beautiful sketches that we have had specially made for this in 3 different genres of Indian art, because it has been found that coloring, chanting, and visual appeal all affect the mind. We have also sent you a link of an article that is a research article. We'll also have a small video by Rukmini Vijay Kumar that is done as a tribute to Swami Dayananda Saraswati ji on his birthday. That is also on drama. And in the afternoon, we'll have a Nataka session by Sri Prakash Belwadi, who's an internationally renowned theatre person and an actor too. And of course, the evening programs tomorrow will be interesting ones. You can, just visit our website and you'll get all the information. For those who have not got the sketches, please go to our website. It's all uploaded there and you can print it from there. And keep your colors ready. And maybe we'll let you show us your colors too tomorrow. Thank you very much, and namaskar, and it's wonderful having all of you.